It's Wednesday, the 1st of March, and I'm going to run down to Oroville and see how the Battle of Midway goes with the Oroville Reservoir Complex. Let's take a look at some numbers here, and we can get some idea of how the battle's going. In the last 2 days, it looks like the elevation of the reservoir has gone up about 4 feet. So 4 feet in 2 days will give them plenty of room with this part of the dance of the dams. To get this work done, they want to work a total of 5 to 7 days before they reopen the main spillway. So we're up to 843 feet. Remember, they don't want to get any higher than about 860 feet while they've got this main spillway shut off. Zero outflow. Inflows are still fluctuating reasonably between 17 and 20,000 CFS. That's as the temperatures freeze at night versus warm during the day. Still a good break in the weather to put this plan into action. The river release, they're maintaining a steady 2,500 CFS. This part of the equation, we don't know how much water do they have left to continue this outflow at 2,500 CFS. From this data, we can't tell how much water is left in the Afterbay and the Forebay to keep this flow going. What's going to run out first? Are we going to run out of storage space, or are we going to run out of water to flow back into the Feather River? And of course, the big story is that debris pile, that huge debris pile. There's some stunning new high-def drone footage that came out from the Department of Water Resources yesterday showing the extent of the damage to the spillway and the size of that debris pile. And they're estimating a million cubic feet, correction, a million cubic yards of material down here. So in the 5 to 7 days that we have to work with, how much of that can they get rid of? Or are they just going to dig a channel around it to drain the Thermalito diversion pool and get the power plant back into operation? Here's another great view of that debris pile, and here's possibly the channel that they might cut to get around it. That's what I want to go look at today, see how that job's going. A lot of talk by you gold bugs about possible gold in here. Yeah, there may very well be some gold in there, but they certainly do not have the time to fiddle around with that right now. They're storing this material off to the side, and they're probably going to use that material in further repairs later on. A quick look at the weather forecast. Looks like we're going to have storms returning starting on the weekend, and they should be fast-moving, colder storms, but no big warm-up like some folks are threatening. Now, let me clarify something about this weather. When I post this is the weather in the valley. This is how warm it gets down in the valley near where the actual dam is. The Sierras, it's a whole different story. As you know, the standard adiabatic collapse rate of 2.5 degrees per 2.5 degrees per 1,000 feet, and makes it a lot colder in the mountains. And look at those morning lows. I mean, that snowpack is frozen hard and just beginning to melt slightly. Another great advantage right now is the sun angle this time of year is low enough to prevent a major warming, melting, and running off of the snow yet. The worst kind of weather we could possibly have to deal with is the kind of weather that got us into this situation. It's when those warm pineapple expresses come barreling into California like a giant fire hose of warm water washing down the Sierra snowpack at the same time. That's what creates flooding conditions. Right now, that looks like that kind of weather is not on the horizon. Certainly not on the immediate horizon. The normal spring runoff from the high Sierras is normally a very manageable event. So let's jump on the old Rally Raid CB500X that was my prior claim to fame on YouTube, and head on down to Orville and see what kind of trouble we can get into. Well, it's Wednesday, the 1st of March, 11:30 a.m., and look at that damage. It is incredible. The officials had to just, when they shut that water off and sent the drone down there and look at that footage, they had to just be impressed with the amount of damage. I don't think you can call this spillway no longer compromised. It's more like the second half of it's destroyed. Let's see if we can take a closer look. There's the top of the spillway, water still trickling down. You know, they can't get those radial arm gates to close the seals quite all the way, so some water continues to trickle down, and that does cause erosion right up there at the head. That is a bit of a problem, and they are working to tighten up those seals on the radial arm gates. Remember, those radial arm gates are still being operated under emergency backup power generators up there at the top of the spillway. And here's the mad rush to clear the debris field. I want to go down there and take a closer look. That debris field is so huge at 1 million cubic yards, I don't think the time allotted is going to be enough to get it all cleaned out. I think they're going to have to engineer a channel around the debris field to drain this Thermalito diversion pool to get the pressure, to get the water down low enough to open up the exhaust ports to the power plant and get it going again. They're also rewiring up the power plant to the grid, because remember, they got to have the power plant on the grid in order to operate it, in order to drain the water out of the bottom of Orville Reservoir. Well, here's where the emergency spillway carved that canyon down into the diversion pool. And look at that, they've already built a road, a couple of roads over that to get down here to clean up this debris pile. "500 folks working 24/7 all over this complex." So this is part of the monitoring system, all the monitoring that's going on in this situation. They've contracted out with Verizon to provide these. There's a pair of cameras on top of this van, and it's shooting straight across the diversion pool and watching the spillway up there. And the folks in Sacramento, this feed is getting fed to the folks in Sacramento, so they can continue to monitor that spillway. So they got helicopters in the air, drones in the air, and monitoring cameras all around the situation here. I don't know if you can see it on this cell phone camera, but there's a crane up there, and there's folks in a basket being lowered down inside the spillway. So it looks like now they're getting around to inspecting it from the inside. AJ Abel from Action News in Chico. He actually has a pretty good grasp of what's going on. So it looks like they're preparing this channel off to the side to get this water out of here. Again, I just don't think they're going to be able to get all of this material out of here in the allotted time frame. But I think they'll be able to get this channel going to lower the water enough to get the power plant going. How they're going to keep this material from being a problem in the future, I don't know, other than if they expect to not hardly use this spillway at all anymore. But that's going to be determined by Mother Nature. What I mean by not using this spillway anymore, if they can control the water level of Orville Reservoir with just the Hyatt power plant. But that's only good for 14,000 CFS. Looking upstream here, that's where the end of the debris pile is. They need to open up that channel. The revised estimate on the size of this debris field is now 1.5 million cubic yards of material. Here comes a whole nother volley of trucks in to get some more material out of here. How many scoops can those trucks take each? Comes the next truck. Looks like about 4 scoops filled them up. Now it looks like a lot of this is getting dumped right up here, just off to the side of where the emergency spillway carved its own canyon down here to the diversion pool. So it looks like that rock there is going to be out of the way of the emergency spillway and helping to armor up the lower parts of the spillway, as most of that spillway water ended up in this newly formed canyon right there. They're using this debris field rubble to build bench steps below the emergency spillway, which in the event if they ever use that spillway again would help slow down the water. Right in the middle of the break is a dude standing in the spillway. If you can see that, you can get an idea of the size, the enormous size and scope of this operation. So on the geology maps, that's I think metavolcanic is what they call it. It's ancient volcanic rock over there, but it's, and I don't know if this rock over here is the same stuff, but it's like a 3D puzzle, and once you start chiseling away at the puzzle, it comes apart fairly readily. So if you chisel away at it, see, it comes apart fairly easily. You get water down in there in those cracks, and that 3D puzzle is just going to come apart. You hear the sound of that Hughes 500C? I think that's one of the PG&E helicopters, and some boom trucks down there working on rewiring the high tension power poles for the Hyatt power plant. Here's the aluminum high tension wires that they had to chop down out of the way of the emergency spillway when this disaster started. And here's all the wire left over. Remember, they had to chop the wires down because they ran across the emergency spillway and they were afraid they were going to lose a tower from the erosion of the emergency spillway spilling over the top, and that would domino or pull all the towers down. So in order to save the towers, they chopped all these wires with a helicopter, a guy hanging 50, 75 feet down on a helicopter with a pair of giant dikes or ratchet clippers, clipped these lines, dropped them on the ground, and then the crews came and picked them up off the ground and stored them here. Now I got the rest of the story of what's going on with these power lines. Check it out. There's the top of Oroville Dam. By the way, that's about 960 feet. I was previously misquoted on the height of that main dam at Oroville. Over there is the high tension power lines that run into the Hyatt powerhouse, which is located right down in this area back underneath the dam. This is where they had to clip the wires to avoid losing these towers as the emergency spillway began to flow. They have since already rewired these towers, and the word is they have electricity as of today, Wednesday, the 1st of March. They have now power, positive power to the Hyatt powerhouse. They haven't turned anything on yet, turbine-wise, but the power is available. Now that is a temporary fix. Reusing the old towers is going to be a temporary fix, and they have contracted out to put in a whole new power line running this direction away from the emergency spillway. The emergency spillway is way up over there, and set a whole nother set of permanent power lines up this direction. That's good news in the race to get power back to the Hyatt powerhouse. It's there. Now it's just a matter of getting the water level down low enough to fire it up. Check out the hook and the long line. That's how they do this job. Right to it. That's a Hughes 500 F model. Not a C, but an F. How do you quickly string all this high tension wire back on the power poles? Well, you start with this device here called a traveler. You hang this traveler up on the power pole where you want the wire to run. It's got this gate right here. And then you take this machine and that helicopter and you hook up rope from this machine to the helicopter and fly it out to the travelers mounted on the power poles and snap that rope into position right there. Then later on, you use these machines to pull pull the wire, to retract the rope and pull the wire through instead. And then once you've got the wire hanging up there and the rope back in, hanging off of these travelers, you begin to set the proper sag on the wires, the proper tension on the wires with this machine here. And then finally, you button up the job by getting the wires permanently attached to the towers and removing these travelers. And that's all done by contractor. They loop up the wires and fly them out of there. The guys on the ground reassemble them after they've been cut, and then like this, and then pick them up with the helicopter and fly them out and drop them off here. Some of that high tension wire, a short length of it, it just feels like a solid bar of aluminum. It's not as flexible as a whole line. Summit Helicopter's Hughes 500 F model, right? F model. And Robert's flying this thing. It's a single pilot operation, and he moves these ropes, gets them on the towers, just hanging them off of this arm here, and there's his hook down there, and there's his Ono bar releaser here, and he flies sideways parallel to the transmission lines and snaps those ropes into each traveler as they come along. Single pilot operation. I thought he'd have another guy helping him on the side of the helicopter, but that's some challenging work. He got all his flying experience. Robert got all his flying experience in the ag industry.
I see rope, it's literally rope.
Yeah, so there's that kind of lightweight rope that you're working with. Setup, they can spool as much as 18,000 feet of line in less than an hour. Very quick setup. Now time for a view from the top. Look who it is, it's Kevin Dawsey, right?
Right.
And you're the lead engineer out here?
No, well, I'm a civil engineer.
Civil engineer.
At Orville Field Division.
Okay, good. So we're going to get a bunch of good information from Kevin here. I'll share with you in a minute. Okay, just spent the afternoon crawling around the Orville project here and finally got to get a hold of Kevin Dawsey, the chief civil engineer here at Orville, and he gave me the latest scoop on all the technical data. The delicate dance of the dams is working well. The current lake level, see that here, yeah, the current lake level is 844 feet, so it's only up about 5 feet from when they started, well below the 860 feet, which is kind of the arbitrary knock-it-off level for the lake to stop running the spillway, or start running the spillway. The amount of water in the Thermalito Afterbay and Forebay, there's still about a week's worth of water to continue a 2,500 CFS flow into the Feather River. That's the other delicate part of the balance. What is by far and away the most limiting factor right now is the amount of debris in the Thermalito diversion pool. That estimate is up to 1.5 million cubic yards of debris in the Thermalito diversion pool. In the last day and a half, they've been able to move 60,000 cubic yards. So that's several months worth of work if you want to completely excavate the Thermalito diversion pool. That's not going to happen. So just as I suspected, they're going to build a channel around the debris field. By the way, the water level, let me see if I got that here. The water level of the Thermalito diversion pool is below the height of the exhaust ports for the Hyatt power plant. Good news. Yeah, they're currently at 229 feet in the Thermalito diversion pool. So what all this means is they may very well have the Hyatt power plant up and running as soon as tomorrow, Thursday. I talked to the guys rigging the wires. They've got the wires all connected back up, and they have power to the Hyatt power plant. But they haven't run any turbines yet. So everything's coming together to get the Hyatt power plant going, but they're going to continue to excavate material out of the Thermalito diversion pool. They got the channel going around the debris field, and they're digging another channel from the end of where the end of the main spillway blew out, clearing away for more debris to get into the Thermalito diversion pool without building another dam, without creating another dam type situation. So things are looking up. Still got a great break in the weather. Inflows are cooperating here at Orville today on Wednesday, the 1st of March. Now let's look at some of the rest of the complex downstream from Orville. Here's some other key components in the Orville structure. This is the end of the Thermalito diversion pool at the fish hatchery, and that's the ladder for the hatchery. So this is just the water they're draining out of the Thermalito diversion pool into this portion of the Feather River. To make up the rest of the flow, they're getting it from the Afterbay and the Forebay, which we'll go check out next. Very low flow. So way over there now is the Orville Dam and the emergency spillway patch job. And this is the Thermalito Forebay, a source of the 2 weeks worth of water to continue to keep water flowing into the Feather River at 2,000 to 2,500 CFS. And at the other end of this bay is another dam and a power plant, and that power plant, I believe, is used to provide electricity for the California aqueduct for the pumping of water up over the Tehachapi Mountains into Southern California. So this is all water that is diverted back up there at the end of the Thermalito diversion pool where the fish hatchery is. And just to the left of the Orville Reservoir is that's Table Mountain. That's a very interesting piece of California geography and geology and wildflower blooms up there. That's a whole nother video series. Now back behind these locked gates is the Thermalito Forebay power plant, the one that was involved in a fire 4 or 5 years ago and has been, I think, out of operation ever since. And now I think they're scrambling to get this power plant back into operation. I think the primary purpose of this power plant is to provide electricity for the California aqueduct system. And this Thermalito Forebay can act like a battery then. They can just fill up the water level when they need electricity, run the water level down and produce electricity. And when they don't need the power, shut off the power plant and raise the water level back up here in the Thermalito Forebay. And of course the exhaust of this heads down that canal into the Thermalito Afterbay. That's where they get all this water to feed the Feather River at this time, about 2 weeks worth built up. Looks like raccoon for dinner tonight. This is the far end of the Thermalito Afterbay, a huge body of water that is right now, due to the emergency situation up in Orville, it's this stored water that's keeping the Feather River alive, and there's over a week's worth of water stored in here with no water coming out of Orville Dam. 2 weeks worth, or at least a week's worth of water in here to keep the Feather River flowing at over 2,000 CFS. And the Orville Dam located way up over there. So normally this Afterbay is used to help farmers irrigate their pastures off to the west here. You know, we do a funny thing in California where it's a desert half of the year. We grow rice, which takes a lot of water, and this is some of the water that's used for that rice growing. Of course, the rest of this is returned to the Feather River, and that Feather River, of course, merges with the Sacramento River. San Joaquin River heads into the Bay Area. But there in the Delta, just before it departs for the Bay Area, the water is picked up near Tracy, Byron area for the California Aqueduct. So this is kind of the headwaters for the entire California Aqueduct system. This is the spillway out of the Thermalito Afterbay that's keeping the Feather River alive right now. And a good example of radial arm gates. We'll take a look at that. And there's the water going back into the Feather River after the Thermalito Afterbay. And here's a good example of how these radial arm gates work. They rotate down here and they pivot up on that jack screw. I don't know if you can see it inside of there, and open and close. And here's why you got to keep somebody here to keep an eye on these things. You get debris and crap in there and you can jam these gates. So that's about 2,000 to 2,500 CFS right now flowing into the Feather River, keeping it alive. Well, I've had a great time today roaming all over the Orville Reservoir Complex and all these afterbays and forebays and different waterways that all makes this puzzle work and the dancing of the dams work. I'll get home and put together a coherent overview of what I've learned today, and overall things are looking up for Orville Reservoir.